So I was in my local sharing a bottle of vodka with Rachmaninoff, and he turned to me and he said, "So Jan, what do you think of my second Piano Concerto?" Oh, that was terrible. I know I am just no good at impressions. That sounded nothing like Rachmaninoff. Anyway, I turned to him and I said, "Well, Sergei, it wasn't bad." Because being British, we have a penchant for understatement. But I had to add, it's a bit long for a house track, isn't it? And I don't think the techno clubs will be playing it. He finished his vodka and went off to complete his third piano concerto. So, I will now tell you a story which is absolutely true. And it happened many years ago. I've been asked to lecture on a music technology course by a local college. It was, I believe, one of, if not the first music technology courses in the UK. So it was a while ago. For one class, I asked the students to bring in a copy of their favourite piece of music. And yes, you guessed it, one guy brought in Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto. Now, these were 18, 19-year-old students, so this was something I just did not expect. So we played it and we had a listen, and I asked him why he brought it in, why he liked it so much. And he said, "It's the most romantic piece of music I have ever heard." And I think that basically sums it up. It seems to have got some mixed reviews from the critics, but I think it's always been a public favourite. Now, if you haven't heard this, or at least if you think you haven't heard it, you quite probably have, because it has been used in dozens of movies and probably TV series as well as a romantic theme. But if you need a refresher and just want to listen to it again, I'll leave 2 links to 2 versions on YouTube. One of them is an amazing performance by a young woman. The second one contains a score of the music. It's not the full score, it's a sort of piano arrangement. But if you read music, or if you just want to follow along, you can count the bars and you can follow the ups and downs of the arpeggios. Then this is a really nice one to watch. Now, I think I first heard this when I was in my teens, and I've listened to it many times since, and I think romantic, at least for me, perfectly sums it up. Now, if you want to examine this music, I am not a classical scholar, I'm not a musicologist, but just listening to this piece of music, listening to the themes, the tunes, the way they change and evolve, I have 3 takeaways from this piece of music. There are probably dozens and dozens more, but just listening to it, basically for enjoyment, I picked up 3 things which I would like to share. Now, I don't know if you think this is the most romantic piece of music you have ever heard. I think it is incredibly romantic, and as I say, it's been used in many movies as a romantic theme. I think it achieves this, shall we say, in just 2 basic ways. I think the first one is the tune itself, which is a little bit chromatic. Now, Chopin was famous for his chromaticism, and I think a lot of his music is quite romantic as well. But alongside that, Rachmaninoff used some wonderful harmonies. So this combination of the harmonies and the chromaticism of the melody, I think, combine to produce this feeling of romance. The second thing, and this really fascinated me, it's the way the melody just seems to go on and on and on, not in a bad way. It just seems to develop and progress and build and build. Now, most themes or tunes that, well, certainly that I write, and most modern music is built around, they are typically 4 bars or perhaps even 8-bar phrases, little riffs, if you like, or motifs in classical terminology. And the tunes in this piece are built on short motifs, but they are so cleverly put together and arranged and developed, to me at least, certainly from the early days of hearing it, it just seems to evolve. It seems as if it's a massive sort of 64-bar tune. Now, when I write stuff, that it does tend to be in short fragments, but the skill, the genius perhaps, or just one of the genius aspects of Rachmaninoff was the way he was able to develop and progress themes like this, so they sounded, shall we say, as a whole rather than a combination of shorter phrases. Now obviously he's not the only classical composer to do this, but the themes in this piece are so memorable, shall we say, that it is the first piece that had this effect on me. Now, I actually always have something like this at the back of my mind when I'm writing a piece, or certain types of pieces of music, and I'm wondering if I can just take a motif or a theme or a riff and evolve it. I think this is quite difficult to do, otherwise we'd all be Rachmaninoffs, wouldn't we? But it's an interesting thing to think about, to put 2 or 6 or a dozen phrases together so they flow together, not just creating short 4-bar riffs. So the third thing which this piece brings to mind, if you listen to it, and particularly if you watch the score, you'll see it has a lot of tempo changes, a little tempo fluctuations, changes in expression, and it goes from one to another. Now, it sort of sounds seamless, but if you watch the score, you know when they're coming up and you can hear abrupt changes. But because of the way the piece is constructed, it doesn't sound abrupt, at least not to me. And this is one of the things I sort of find difficult to incorporate in a piece of music. Tempo changes or a real change of pace. I have done it in a few pieces. I shall link to 1 or 2 in the description if I can remember which ones they are. But so many modern pieces of music, they sort of start off in one tempo and they stick with that tempo. They have a selection of instruments which they will bring in and fade out. Having a fast change of sound or feeling or tempo, it's not so easy to incorporate into a piece of music. At least I don't find it so easy to write. So they are just 3 things which Rachmaninoff taught me from this one piece. Now I'm sure if you study it you could get 2 dozen more ideas for music compositions from this piece of music. And of course if you look at the classical repertoire as a whole, each piece of music has its own little gem waiting there for you to discover and be inspired by. So of course I have questions for you. Do you think Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto is the most romantic piece of music ever written? I struggle to think of anything more romantic, to be honest. But if you have another piece which you think is more romantic or just as romantic, it doesn't have to be classical, it can be any song, any tune, let me know in the comments. And the second question I'd be interested in, now I think many people have been inspired by a range of classical composers. I think Bach inspires just about everyone. So other than Rachmaninoff and his second piano concerto, is there a piece of music, a piece of classical music, or a particular classical composer who has inspired you in your music making? Now I know we're talking about classical music here and this is a synthy electronic music channel, but we're talking about composition techniques and they can get applied to just about any kind of music. And I think I probably draw influences from just about every piece of music I've ever heard, which includes classical, rock, pop, electronic music, and so on. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. That's it for this one. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it interesting. If you are not yet a subscriber, perhaps you would like to consider subscribing, ringing the bell. Thank you. So YouTube will tell you when I post a new video. As always, I really do appreciate you spending time with me watching my videos. For that, thank you very much indeed. And if you've enjoyed this video, I think you might enjoy these videos as well. Check them out. I will see you again in the next one very soon.